This war changed forever the United States of America. It changed forever the lives of people who lived through it, and it changed forever the lives that we are able to live today. There's not one American, there's not one person who calls themselves a citizen of this great country that has not been impacted by the American Civil War.
That's why the Shenandoah Valley Battlefield Foundation continues its work to preserve and protect Civil War battlefields throughout the area. Thursday, the foundation announced a major preservation victory at the Staunton train station, which was followed by a reception at the American Hotel.
When we fail to do what we've always done best as Americans, which is compromise, work together, find commonalities. These battlefields are important. They are more about our future than our past, and because of many of you, they're being saved.
The McDowell Battlefield is in Highland County and is one of the most well-preserved battlefields in the nation. Because of that, now the McDowell Battlefield, 1,900 acres, is slated to remain in its natural state.
Shenandoah Valley was, for lack of a better term, almost like the Gaza Strip of the Civil War. There was always conflict, always something happening here, and it was tied to 6 major campaigns, 4 years of war, 20 battles, well over 300 skirmishes and engagements. And so it's a very significant site for national history, not just local history.
Kevin Walker is the CEO of Shenandoah Valley Battlefield Foundation.
The Civil War was a national conflict that had been brewing since the nation was started. You can think of the Civil War actually as the last battles of the American Revolution. It was the last part of our struggle to become a nation that had to happen before we could become one strong, unified nation that recognized the equality and freedoms of all people. That recognition wouldn't come immediately, but it would start. It started in some ways during the Constitutional Convention. It was continued and moved forward in a big way during the American Civil War. And as you move from Civil War through civil rights and on through today, that struggle continues, and the Civil War needs to be remembered as a major part of that.
According to Walker, the district encompasses 8 counties and runs from Virginia to West Virginia and north of Winchester to just south of Staunton. John Hutchinson is the conservation director for the foundation. Hutchinson says the foundation purchased the property with state money from the Virginia Battlefield Preservation Fund and federal money from the American Battlefield Protection Program.
We got $60,000 from the state, and we got about $80,000 from the feds. The total purchase price was $145,000.
Nancy Sorrells is on the Education and Interpretation Committee for the foundation. She talked to me about McDowell Battlefield.
To preserve a place where Americans lost their lives fighting for what they believed in, and it is important. I think it's hallowed ground, and so what the Shenandoah Valley Battlefield Foundation does to preserve this land and make sure it doesn't change, and then to go forward and use that land as a tool to interpret and tell the story and help us grow as Americans from it is just wonderful.
Terry Heder is the Director of Interpretation, Education, and History for the Foundation. Heder says preserving the Civil War era is essential.
This is a huge part of the telling that story at that battlefield. It's a huge part ultimately of also linking together that battlefield for visitors to be able to tie together different spots. To have battlefields that only have separate isolated parts, preserved parcels, it's harder to tell the history, to understand the history of being on that ground. The more you can connect that, the more you can have land that looks a lot like it did during the war, the more it makes that history come to life.
Stuart Thomas is a Staunton attorney and one of the SVBF's board members. Thomas says a lot of our mistakes are due to forgetting the past.
One of the big causes of the Civil War was a failure of the politicians to compromise. And, you know, unfortunately in today's times you can see that happening too. And I think it'd be far better for everyone to remember the past and try to avoid the pitfalls rather than to ignore it.
Hugh Sproul is the vice chairman of the foundation's Board of Trustees. Sproul says it is important to know about America's past struggles.
The bulk of the war was fought in Virginia. Staunton was a target. The Union forces kept trying to get to Staunton because Staunton was a logistic hub. It was also a railroad hub. It was the center of the logistic support that supported the Confederate Army.
He says trains passing through Staunton during the Civil War carried ammunition.
More than that, food and other supplies, and also wounded and medical supplies, things like that. The railroad was new in Staunton at that time. The tunnel through the Blue Ridge Mountain was what made it possible, and that was completed in 1850. So the railroad had only been here 10 years.
Walker explained, preserving the history of the Civil War is not just for one group, but for the melting pot of America.
We became a world power because we started to embrace all peoples in our country. We became a world power in the 20th century because we started to look at ourselves not as small regions, but as one united nation. And the Civil War turned us from these United States to the United States.
In Staunton, Elaine Rackley for Breaking Through News.